and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan, and today we are going to be doing our Game Week 22 episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid. A little bit later on in the week as usual, because we do have a Tuesday deadline this game week. Bit strange, but we've had to shift around the content a little bit this week. Hope that's okay with you guys. And if you do enjoy this one, make sure you do drop a like, do subscribe if you are new around here. Let's have a quick look at the rules of the video. So buys are players you probably don't have but should consider bringing in. Sells are players you might be having, but I think you should potentially remove them. Keeps are players that you might be thinking about removing, but I think you should keep them. And avoids are players that are pretty hyped up right now, but I think they are potential traps that should be avoided. Before we go any further, a quick look at how we got on last game week. So, last game week, actually pretty good in terms of those predictions. I think we did pretty well in terms of the buy, sell, keep, and avoid, particularly a couple of players here that do stand out in the buy section. Estupiñán, Jota, and Tony. Some great scores from those players. So, hopefully you guys did manage to pick up maybe a player or two from the buy list last game week. And I think overall, the only real, I guess, mistakes in this video were the Gordon sell, which I kind of do regret putting that one in there to a degree. But in fairness, in that video, I did say that was a soft sell because there were so many other midfielders going off to AFCON and Asian Cup, and I didn't want to pick one of those players to sell. So it's like, who else can I pick that a lot of people own? And I went for Gordon, and maybe that was bad advice, so apologies for that one. But on the avoid section, I did put De Bruyne in, and obviously he came in and did very, very well in the end. But the whole basis around why he was an avoid was because I thought, okay, I know this player is not going to start this week. This is a De Bruyne who has literally come out in the media and said, I don't think I'm going to start in Game Week 21, and he didn't start. So we kind of got that part right, but what we maybe didn't kind of understand is what he could produce in just 20 minutes of football. So I don't know if that is me maybe overlooking his potential from the bench, or maybe, you know, in another situation, would I recommend buying a player who, you know, I think is going to be benched? Still probably not, even if I do think they have potential from the bench. I wouldn't be buying that kind of player. So no serious regrets, I guess, from last week. I think we did pretty well, and hopefully we can continue that trend into Game Week 22. So starting off with some buys, and we are going to start off reasonably controversial here with Ederson as my goalkeeper pick. Now, in general, I don't think goalkeeper transfers are really worth it at the moment. There's no big standout goalkeepers, but if you are in a situation where you feel you are forced to make a goalkeeper transfer, or maybe you're on a wild card and you're looking for a new goalkeeper, well, Ederson, you could do worse. You could do worse. Now, he has got a flag, a yellow Dorito of death next to his name on the FPL website and app, but he has been training for the last week. So we're not really too worried about him being fit and available. He's going to be absolutely fine, we imagine. Burnley up next, which is really nice. We've got Everton in a couple of game weeks as well, again at home. But more importantly, we have got that double game week. We've got no blank for Man City in the very, very near future. And we have got that double game week against Chelsea and Brentford, both at home there as well. So I do really like the look of this run of games for the Man City defenders. We are getting to a point where the likes of Kyle Walker, who is probably the standout defender to buy from Man City, he is getting a little bit more expensive, and I do think there are other defenders we can go for right now in the goalkeeper slot. There's not really too much going on, so if you do want to get involved in the Man City defense, maybe going the goalkeeper route could be the way to do it. I actually don't mind this one. If you want to go for a new goalkeeper, I think Ederson would probably be the player that I'd be looking for, but let me know what you think about that one, guys, because I know there's probably a bit of discussion to be had around Ederson as an FPL pick. Of course, our buy-in defense is once again going to be Pervis Estupiñán. No change from last week there. Still think he is the best defender to pick up right now. Even better than Pedro Porro, who is a little bit more popular this week than Estupiñán. I still prefer Estupiñán, and a big reason, or part of that, is that if you haven't already got Pedro Porro, you do have to be aware that not only do we have some reasonably difficult fixtures for Spurs over the next few game weeks, but it looks like Spurs are going to be blanking in Game Week 26. So no fixture in Game Week 26 for Spurs. So we do need to be very, very careful about picking up Spurs and Chelsea players because of those two teams blanking in Game Week 26. Of course, after tonight's games, which you might have already seen by the time you watch this video, we could also see Liverpool with a blank in Game Week 26 as well. But that's a discussion for tomorrow, perhaps. But yes, certainly Estupiñán looking really good. I think Brighton are much better defensively than people give them credit for, and we have seen in the last couple of game weeks some clean sheets finally. So yeah, hopefully people have now kind of altered their perception of this Brighton defense, see that they can keep clean sheets. And although Estupiñán maybe has not been getting as many, you know, shots and you know, passes, creative passes as we would maybe like, He's playing a little bit deeper at times, which I think is benefiting him for the bonus points. We saw him pick up 2 bonus points in Game Week 21. I think that's really good for him for bonus points. But we are still seeing a Stupinian pop up in dangerous areas. And although he's maybe not getting the final pass or the final shot of being in those dangerous areas, and you only really know this by watching the games, I think it's half the battle. So very much still like a Stupinian. If you're looking for a new defender, he is your guy. So, what a change from last game week where both De Bruyne and Haaland were avoids. Things have changed. Things move very, very fast in FPL and in football. And in fairness, when a game week is as long as Game Week 21, the longest game week I can remember since playing FPL, like 2.5 weeks between deadlines. That's crazy. That's it feels like the difference between Game Week 38 and Game Week 31, Game Week 1 the following season. Such a big gap, right? But yeah, things have changed a lot in that time. We now think De Bruyne probably has a good chance of starting against Burnley. He's got plenty of playtime, from the bench now under his belt, and we've got a couple of weeks between his previous fixture and the new fixture. He'll play against Spurs at the weekend. I think we are going to start to see De Bruyne getting those starts now, which is very, very good. And if we saw what he produced in 20 minutes, well, what can he produce in 60 minutes? Because I think realistically right now, we're looking at De Bruyne probably playing around 60 minutes rather than the full 90, at least in the short term, whilst he builds himself up a little bit. But look, this is a great footballer. We all know this, and maybe some people forgot about it. Maybe some people were reminded this weekend. Maybe people still need the reminder. But look, what can I say? He's a guy who is a great, creative player, the best creative player in the league. I'm sure most of you guys would agree with that one. And particularly if he can link up with a Haaland who is returning from injury, then things are going to look very, very good for De Bruyne indeed. So yeah, De Bruyne very much back on the menu. If you're looking to sell one of your premium players, a Salah or a Son, because they're kind of away with international duty or, injured, then De Bruyne is a really good replacement there. And I think a very obvious transfer for those guys looking to spend the money that you have. Of course, once again, with Man City, we've got a double game week coming up as well. So not only a great fixture against Burnley, where these Man City players are going to be our primary captain candidates, but we also got a double game week coming up in a few weeks as well. Chelsea and Brentford. Of course, no blank in game week 26 either for Man City, which is a real nice advantage to have. So De Bruyne, we like him a lot. Welcome back to FPL. Back with a bang. Let's start picking him up for our teams. And of course, Erling Haaland, he is also expected to be back this game week as well, which is pretty nice, really, isn't it? So yeah, Haaland is back in full training. I know you've probably heard this before, but this is coming from the official Man City camp now, that Haaland is back in full training. So that's very, very good. We still have almost a week until the following game week. So there's still plenty of time to see how Haaland progresses. If he gets any minutes against Spurs in the FA Cup this weekend, I think that is probably enough justification to say, let's bring him back into our FPL teams, because we know how important Haaland is in FPL. We know how great he is as a player, as a goal scorer, as a captain option. If we think Haaland's going to start at home against Burnley, you don't get too much better than that as a fixture. So we really, really would be hoping to have him in our FPL teams. And the quicker you get back on Haaland, the better, in my opinion. As soon as we know he's starting again regularly, he's going to start scoring goals again regularly. We need to get back in on him as quickly as possible. And I think it's going to start this game week. Wouldn't be leaving it too much later than that, particularly when you look at that double game week, where you might even be looking to triple captain Haaland for that double game week. Haaland right now, when we look at the triple captainship, Haaland in game week 25, Chelsea at home, Brentford at home, to me, is the standout triple captain week for us, really, and it's going to be on him. So, yeah, there we go. Buy those Man City attackers, great fixtures, and a double game week. What more can I say? Vicario, I'm going to put down as a sell. Again, I don't know if I would feel an extreme pressure to do this necessarily, because goalkeeper transfers in general don't seem worth it. But if I have to put, a very popular goalkeeper right now in the sell category, it would be a player who is a little bit expensive at 5.3 million. The underlying numbers are poor. Spurs conceding a whole bunch of chances. They concede so many chances, don't they? You can see here, expected goals conceded 9.59 in the past 5 games. For Vicario. That's a lot. That is a serious amount. Spurs just are not clicking defensively still. I don't think they're trying to click defensively necessarily, because, they're an attack-first team, and I think Vicario does suffer because of that. In addition to that, we spoke about this already, but Spurs, we're expecting them to have a blank game week in game week 26. Technically, there is still a chance that that Spurs will play in the midweek instead in game week 26. We won't know anything about that until at least after the FA Cup games this weekend. But even if, both Spurs and Chelsea get knocked out of the FA Cup, that is the only way Spurs can still play in Game Week 26. And even if they both get knocked out, there's still not a guarantee. There's still no guarantee that that game that was meant to be played in Game Week 26 will be rescheduled for within the same game week. So I think if we are looking now at kind of players that we can sacrifice, start sacrificing now in order to make sure we are covered for Game Week 26 and we don't have too many Chelsea and Spurs players and possibly Liverpool players as well. I think Vicario would be quite an easy player to sacrifice, considering we're not really expecting too many points from him in general anyway. So yeah, a good week to sell when he's playing against Brentford. After that, it's probably a little bit more of a struggle to sell him. So now would be the time to do it. If you don't do it this week, I probably wouldn't bother doing it. I'd wait for as late as possible. We've also got Matty Cash here, just a continuous sell. Obviously, still a player owned by a lot of people. Still a lot of people have him in their squads. Still not getting regular game time. Still not starting games as much as we would like him to. So therefore, he's a pretty simple sell there as well. We don't need to talk about Cash too much. He's just like a continuous sell, really. In fact, maybe I even need to stop putting him in the sell category. But in general, the other kind of defenders you'd be looking to sell that a lot of people are selling this week, I'm not totally convinced by, but Cash I am convinced by as a sell. Now, in an interesting twist, I think Salah has become a sell. Now, he's actually a player I kept in my team. I know a lot of you guys kept him in your team for Game Week 21, maybe left him on your bench, expecting him to be back within the next couple of weeks after his AFCON stint, ready for a potential double game week in Game Week 25. It's not guaranteed yet, so I'm not going to put it on the graphic, but it looks like a double game week. It is very, very possible for Salah this game week. But what we definitely should say is that, yeah, Salah is injured, and his injury is going to be 3 to 4 weeks, which puts him out until really the second game in Game Week 25, assuming it is a double game week. And I think because of the way the blanks have landed for Salah, assuming they go through in the League Cup game tonight, it's going to be a blank in 26. He's not going to be ready for the double in 25 either, which is kind of a bit dodgy. He's going to be out at least for the next 3 game weeks. And then after that, we're going to look at we're going to have a game against Nottingham Forest, but then a game against Man City, and then probably another blank. Again, another blank for Salah after that. So really, over this next period of maybe 10 game weeks, with Salah injured for a few, blanking for a few, playing Man City in that stretch of fixtures as well, do we really need him? Do we really want him in our FPL teams right now? I mean, it sounds crazy because Salah is such an amazing FPL asset, but he's not going to be available for so many of these game weeks. And one of the game weeks that he is, one of the very few game weeks that he will be available for is going to be against Man City anyway. You kind of do have to think, do we need this player? Considering he's 13.1 million, can you afford to have that amount of money sitting on your bench for so many game weeks over the next, 8, 9, 10 game week period? Can you afford to have him for so long? I don't know. I don't think you can. So I think Salah has now become a player to sell if you did hold on to him. Just bite the bullet. Fair enough. You maybe wished you sold him last game week. Well, too bad. Sell him this week instead. And I think really we're going to be looking at the time to get Salah back will actually be when we play our second wildcard. When we play our wildcard this season, that will be a good time to get Salah back into your team. Because right now, I don't think he's needed just because of those so many games missed, really. It's going to be a lot over this next period for Salah and for Liverpool as well after Salah comes back from injury. So, yeah, in general, a sell. I think he's a sell. Yeah, let me know what you think about that one, guys, because I know, once again, a bit of a controversial subject, I guess, selling Salah, because, yeah, obviously he's a fantastic player. Julian Alvarez, I think, is going to be my forward sell, and I have to say, this was the hardest one. This was the hardest one this week, who to sell out of forwards, because I know you guys are going to want to get Erling Haaland back in your team. If he plays any minutes against Spurs this weekend, you're going to want him back in for Game Week 22. And it's going to be a case of who are you going to sell in order to make that happen. Now, if De Bruyne is back, and if Haaland is back, then the person who is at biggest risk of rotation is now Alvarez. Serious risk of rotation, because Alvarez really, over the last however long, has been covering for Haaland and covering for De Bruyne when those guys have not been playing. And if those two guys are back, then Alvarez, I don't know, he doesn't really have a place naturally to start every game, and we would expect to see him on the bench more often than starting. So therefore, he has now become a super high rotation risk player, and I don't think Man City will have too much trouble dropping him anyway. He's played okay, don't get me wrong, but he hasn't played like insanely well to a degree where he's undroppable now. Maybe like a Phil Foden has been playing really, really well recently, so maybe Foden is harder to drop. Alvarez, I think, is a little bit easier to drop and rotate and allow the likes of De Bruyne and Haaland to come back into the team. And there's absolutely no shame, by the way, in getting dropped for those two players returning from injury, because you know these are the best players in world football, really, or some of. So yeah, Alvarez, I think it's the time to sacrifice him. But really, you know, when we're comparing him to other forwards we might be selling, maybe Darwin or Watkins, you know, everyone's great. Everyone's great. So it is difficult to say. And Alvarez, particularly if Haaland doesn't start in Game Week 22, he's going to be a fantastic FPL option. So this is not a cut and dry sell. This is not a really obvious sell, and it's going to have to be down to your decision and whether you think Haaland and De Bruyne are going to start in Game Week 22. If you think they are, then Alvarez is the natural player to be sacrificed in that setup, and therefore would probably be the player to sell. But it depends what you think is going to happen with the Man City lineup in Game Week 22. That's just what I've kind of gathered from the situation. For keeps, I think I'd give Leno one more little run of games. I know he's not scored too well recently, but Everton, Burnley, Bournemouth is a pretty nice run of fixtures, particularly Everton and Burnley, pretty nice for a goalkeeper. So if you do have him, I would just stick with him for at least 2 more game weeks. But yeah, like I say, in general, goalkeeper transfers, probably not going to be worth it. They're a bigger fish to fry right now in the world of FPL. But Trent Alexander-Arnold is a bit more of an interesting keep. A lot of people selling him. He is the most sold defender at time of recording. Already hundreds of thousands of FPL managers are selling Trent. You're selling him too early, guys, because honestly, this guy could be back. This guy could be well and truly back by the time we hit Game Week 22. At time of recording, Liverpool still have 2 games to play. They have the League Cup semi-final to play tonight, and they have the FA Cup game in at the weekend. And I think Trent is going to be in the squad for, you know, I think he'll probably be in the squad tonight. Well, we'll see how foolish I look, I guess, by the time this video comes out. But I think, yeah, he'll certainly be in the squad, maybe even starting by the time we get to the FA Cup this weekend. And at that point, we know Trent is, you know, back properly. And if that's the case, you want him in your FPL team. So, as a non-Trent owner, it is crazy to me that people are selling him. Because I actually am really thinking, how can I get this guy back into my team? There's just no way he's a sell right now, particularly if he does get some minutes over the next 2 cup games for Liverpool before the Game Week 22 deadline. And I'd be very surprised if he didn't get any minutes during that period. So yeah, Trent, I think he's going to be back, and I think you should keep him. People are selling Phil Foden this game week, and I don't know why. He blanked once, and people have run out of patience already. I don't know why. Hundreds of thousands of people, again, selling Phil Foden already. We are still almost a week away from the deadline, and Foden is being sold en masse. And I think most people are probably just making a straight switch, Foden to De Bruyne. I think that's pretty foolish, I'm not going to lie, because I'd quite like to have both of these players in my FPL team right now. Foden is still a fantastic pick, and if you don't have him, I would even consider buying him. But would I be selling him? No way. His numbers are really, really good right now. In the last 4 games he's played, 17 shots, 14 key passes. That is some seriously, seriously high numbers. And yeah, if he continues playing, which I think he will, you know, did pretty well against Newcastle. Unlucky not to get any goal involvement in that game in Game Week 21. And you guys are selling him based on a blank when he actually played very well, looked very, very involved once again, and he's going to have, you know, the likes of De Bruyne and Haaland backing him up in Game Week 22. Man, this could be really a good time for Foden to cook. So there's no way I would be selling him with these fixtures, with a double game week, with the fact he is a player in form, with putting up some really, really good numbers at the moment. Yeah, he's got to stay. He's got to stay in our FPL teams. And as has Solanke, a few people looking to sell Solanke for Haaland potentially. I understand it is really, really difficult to decide which forward to sell to get Haaland, but I would rather go for, you know, a Darwin, an Alvarez, or you know, maybe a Watkins as well. I'd rather sell those players than Solanke. I'm not saying any of those players are must sells. They're really not. I think you can keep them all. There's a lot of great forwards in FPL right now, and a 3-forward formation is probably the way forward at the moment. But one player who I would not sell under any circumstances would be Dom Solanke, a player who has been in great form over the past month or so. We've got some nice fixtures coming up in the next 3, but perhaps more importantly, we're going to get a double game week at some point because of that Bournemouth versus Luton game that was postponed. That's going to fit in somewhere. A few of you guys have asked me, when is that fixture going to be rescheduled for? To be honest, I don't know. It is difficult to say right now because there are so many options. With both teams out of Europe, there's a lot of potential game weeks where that fixture could slot into in the midweek slot. So I don't know right now for sure. There's definitely many options. You know, it could happen in a few game weeks' time. It could happen in, you know, a month or two's time. We're not 100% sure, but it will happen at some point, and you're going to want to have Solanke for that. So I think, you know, whilst we're waiting for more information on that, certainly keep him, particularly when he does have these great fixtures, because we could have these great fixtures and then we get a double game week announcement after that, and you know you want to have Solanke for that. You already have him ready to go, and he's probably just bagged a bunch of goals because he's had some nice fixtures. So no reason to sell him, in my opinion. An absolute keep. Gonna put Areola in the avoid section unless you're on a wild card or unless you're desperately trying to free up some cash. But look, I guess if you are really wanting to downgrade your goalkeeper to a cheap goalkeeper, I think at this point I'd rather go for Dubravka because I think Dubravka has slightly better fixtures than a West Ham. And West Ham's defensive numbers are still really, really poor. I mean, we finally saw West Ham concede a goal after 4 straight clean sheets. But even during that period, you know, West Ham fans will probably, you know, back me up here, who, you know, anyone who watches West Ham regularly. You know, they do concede a lot of chances, and perhaps it has been slightly fortunate that they did get away with so many clean sheets. So Areola, yes, it looked for a moment like he was just like a world-beating FPL asset, but yeah, I don't think that's just going to naturally continue. I've always kind of been cautious and been kind of saying, yes, Areola's been doing great. You definitely keep him for the Sheffield United game, but I think at this point we've kind of the balance has maybe slightly tipped. If you want a cheap goalkeeper, Dubravka has probably become the better of the two in Areola and Dubravka in that debate. So therefore Areola, whilst I would definitely be I say definitely, I'd probably be looking to keep him if I had him. If I didn't own him already, I probably wouldn't be buying him right now. Don't think it's worth a transfer. And also, obviously, avoid Trippier. Yeah, mostly because he's potentially moving to Bayern Munich. We don't know exactly what's going to happen there. A fee still needs to be negotiated. But Trippier seems up for the move, which is crazy stuff. So yeah, right now, if you don't own Trippier already, I do own Trippier. If you don't own him already, would not be looking to buy him because we've got a tough game away at Aston Villa. Aston Villa score a lot of goals and will score goals against Newcastle, we would probably think. So at least wait until after that Aston Villa game and then kind of see what's going on with the transfer situations, Trippier to Bayern. We're not sure what's happening. I think we've got one game week to kind of assess information before going back in on Trippier. After the Aston Villa game, we've got a nice run of fixtures for Newcastle. We are going to want to have Newcastle players, but I would wait. I would wait until we get more information about the transfer and just get past this tough fixture against Villa. Avoids, I think this is fairly straightforward. I think Bernardo Silva is going to be an avoid. I know lots of people are maybe jumping in on Bernardo because they think, hey, it's just a cheaper version of De Bruyne or Foden, right? And he is cheaper, don't get me wrong, and he has been getting some decent-ish FPL scores recently. Very decent, actually. No, he's been doing well. He's been doing well. But there has been a slight overperformance there. But I think the most important factor with Bernardo is that when De Bruyne came on the pitch against Newcastle, it was Bernardo who was substituted off, which I think, maybe looking at this in a very basic way, is that Bernardo is perhaps the obvious sacrifice if we're talking about getting De Bruyne back in playing regularly. You know, it's going to be Alvarez out for Haaland, Bernardo out for De Bruyne. I think that makes a lot of sense if you're going to try and reintegrate these two players into the Man City teams. And of course, Bernardo can play a little bit deeper, he can play wider, but there's so many players available for Man City to play in those positions that I think Bernardo is going to be super rotation risk. So despite the nice fixtures, you don't know for sure that Bernardo is even going to be starting in the good fixtures. We have a double game week coming up for Man City. You don't know for sure that Bernardo is going to be starting both of those games. I expect heavy rotation moving forward for Bernardo with so many players now available. You know, Doku's back as well, which is going to impact minutes on the wings for those wing players as well. Yeah, it just could get really tricky from here on for Bernardo to, you know, get regular game time. And I think for that reason, if I didn't have him already, you know, I know some of you guys already have him. You probably look to keep him, but I don't think it's really worth buying him at this point necessarily. And Haaland, I think, is a reasonably obvious avoid as well. There's just so many great forwards in the Premier League right now to go for. There really, really is. The forward market is banging at the moment. You know, Haaland, Tony, Watkins, Solanke, Darwin's popping off at the moment as well. João Pedro looks like a bargain. You know, I could go on and on. There are so many forwards, and I don't really think there is room for Haaland in that conversation. Now, fair enough, Haaland has got a couple of FPL returns recently. You know, very nice to finally see him, you know, getting up to pace with the Premier Premier League. However, there has been a big overperformance here. You know, 0.46 expected goals suggests, and just 4 shots as well. You know, that's 1 shot per game. That does suggest that he's still not quite getting the service he needs at Manchester United. And although he has scored goals recently, these numbers do suggest that it cannot be maintained. It can't be sustained for too much longer unless unless Manchester United can start providing Højlund with more chances to score. Right now, that is just simply not happening, and you know, regular returns I don't think are quite on the cards yet. Whereas with many other forwards, I think we can have a lot more confidence in them, who are looking much better. You know, with their numbers, with their positioning, with the shots that they're taking, and their involvement in the attacking play of their respective teams. Just don't think Højlund is quite there yet as an FPL asset. So, going to be an avoid for me. Sorry if that upsets anyone. I know people get very excited about Højlund when he starts to pop off, but yeah, just it's not for me. It's not for me. Too many other options. Yeah, you'd be sacrificing better choices if you went for Højlund, which I don't think is worth it in the game of FPL. Just to summarize, guys, yeah, once again, I'm recommended you guys do not make early transfers. We've still got a long time before deadline. We're still going to get more information, potential injuries in the cup games to come this weekend, and indeed tonight as well. So we're going to get lots of information about double game weeks, blank game weeks, who's more likely to double and blank, and you know, more information from the AFCON teams as well. Some players could be back by the time we get to the game week 22 deadline as well. We've already seen Kudus return, and he's going to be available now, which is crazy stuff. If you held Kudus, amazing, because he's going to be back hopefully with a bang for you guys. So yeah, guys, hold your transfers, wait as long as you can. We're going to have a lot of information come in over the next few days, and we'll be sure to share it with you guys on this channel. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy, make sure you drop a like. Do subscribe if you are new around here as well. Really do appreciate that. Go and check out another video if you want. We did a big, long stream, actually, talking more about double game weeks, blank game weeks, and we did a sell tier list in that stream as well. Of course, we did a buy tier list as well, and a full video about chip strategy. So, yeah, check those out. All videos made within the last week. I think you're going to enjoy them. And, yeah, aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.